I want to say how lucky we are here in Easton to actually have this memorial. As many of you know, it was actually built by veterans, mostly of World War II and Korea vintage. So there were folks that were 60 or 70 or even more years old involved in building this as a monument to all the people in Easton, men and women who served in World War II. But the plan, designed by Shep Williams, an Oliver Ames graduate who lived in at Antrim Hammer Shop, was to also include memorials for the people who passed away in Vietnam, served in Vietnam and served in the Korean conflict. The design itself has a lot of symbolism. The plantings are related to the countries that were our allies during the Second World War. Like the Falklands are supposed to represent the hedgerows of France, and there were plants from China and plants from England as well that were put in here. It's just a wonderful place. I bring all the third graders here when they go on their walking tour. Getting back to our story of water power, if you look across where that chain link fence is, that's where all the water that we saw up on the library side comes through. And that was the original site of the Easton Manufacturing Company. And the Easton Manufacturing Company is the other part of the water story here. The Ames Company is an example of heavy industry. That's something that makes Easton unique. But the Easton Manufacturing Company was much more typical of New England. It was a textile factory. All right. Now, the process of making textiles was mechanized slowly but surely over a period of years. And there were a number of steps. One step is called picking, and that's where cotton or wool had the dirt and seeds, in the case of cotton, pulled out of it by a machine. All right. The second step is called carding, and carding is what straightens the fibers of the cotton or the wool, and it's basically a machine that has metal fingers that pulls at the fibers until they're all going in one direction. The next step is spinning, which creates thread, and then the final step is weaving that thread into cloth. The most complicated of those machines was the loom, and that was the last one to be mechanized. The Easton Manufacturing Company allegedly tried to make power looms that worked, but as we know from the history books, it was actually Waltham where the first successful power looms were made by Paul Moody and Francis Cabot Lowell. Ultimately, what the manufacturing company did here was take the carding stage and bring in a carding machine, which was basically a big drum that just rolled around, and a spinning machine. And the spinning machine had been brought to America by Samuel Slater down in Rhode Island at Slater's Mill. And basically what happened was the thread was created, and then the thread was given to all the women and men in the area who had hand looms at home, and they made the cloth. So only 2 steps of the process were ever done on this site. You may know that up off of Canton Street there's a place called Picker Lane, and the reason it's called Picker Lane is that there was a pond up there that provided power for a cotton picking machine that took the seeds out. We would call that a cotton gin. Okay? That came in 1835, long after this business was going broke. Ultimately, in 1851, the building that the factory was in was bought by the Ameses, and the store that was associated was bought by the Ameses as well. And they used that power of this canal for quite a long period of time to run some subsidiary things that the steam engines didn't handle over there. But for the rest of our story, we're interested in the fact that the water comes down here. There's also a drain that comes down from Northeastern. Yes, folks, we have a septic system problem in Northeastern. And everything runs across the street. There's also a drain that runs into this pond from all the catch basins up on North Main Street. So we're going to cross the street over here. For a drop of water that comes in here, to flow out the other end of the pond. I had students in local history class do a whole bunch of measurements one time here. We only did it one time because I got tired of fishing people out of the water in the mud. But that's what it would take. Obviously, on conditions today where the water's flowing faster, it might be a little bit quicker. On the other hand, at other times, it might be slow.
What was the first sentence you said?
Excuse me?
What was the first sentence you said? How long it took?
Takes about a day to go from this end out the other side. Okay. There's 10 acres of water here. It's sort of shaped like a dish. For those of us, who have been in town for a long time, you know about 20 years ago, this whole thing was drained and cleaned out and dredged. So it's actually quite deep in the middle.